This is a great follow-up to Grant's talk on software supply chain, because there really is, software doesn't answer all of our supply chain issues, but it's certainly a huge priority. And the one thing we know, there's been some great work out of the Atlantic Council and Dr. Trey Hare showing just all the range of software supply chain attacks in the community. Let's try, and chance that's sharing a slide? No, not showing anything. Okay. Foundational question I think all of us should be asking is, if tomorrow morning we wake up and we hear that there's a key flaw in a crypto library or in a real-time operating system or in a piece of software that doesn't have a Fortune 100 brand name on it, so it doesn't have its own easy to recognize system on your network, can you as an organization quickly and easily answer a very simple question? Are you potentially affected by it? That is a surprisingly hard question to answer. The hard work should be done by the great hackers who are finding the security flaw. Once we know there's a risk, figuring out, quickly and easily, am I affected, am I not affected, and where is it in my network should be straightforward. And surprisingly, folks can do this. That's a big part of what SBOM is all about. So just very briefly, we're going to talk about transparency. We're going to talk about the progress that's being made toward transparency with the idea of a software bill of materials, and how the community has really made some great progress on the what's, the whys, and the hows. Then we're going to turn over to Bob to talk about a new SBOM specification that he's developed with the CISQ community, and then we'll close out with a very quick summary about how you guys can get involved. And just remember, SBOM, ask for it by name. So just very briefly, we're all familiar with the idea of a list of ingredients. And for me, it's kind of crazy that we know more about what's in, say, a Twinkie than what's in our critical infrastructure and what we're putting on our government networks. And in fact, using the Twinkie example, I love to point out that Twinkies aren't vegetarian. Now, maybe you don't care, and that's okay, because all of us know someone who's got a food sensitivity or a dietary restriction. And the goal here is to empower them with the information to make the right risk-based decision for themselves. It's crazy that we don't have that for software. So for example, the Urgent 11 vulnerability that was discovered last year that people first thought was in just one brand name real-time operating system, it turns out was available in a bunch of our TOSs, including those that are in the F-22 and the F-35. So the stuff is there, it's buried there, and the goal is to make sure that those of us who are responsible for defending these networks know where it is. So what's the software equivalent of a list of ingredients? It's a software bill of materials. What's an SBOM? It's a formal record with the details and the supply chain relationships of various components used in building software. It's effectively a nested inventory, or just a list of ingredients. SBOMs, and forgive me, I'll share the slides.
Alan?
Yes.
Alan? Sorry, it's
yes.
Tracy. I know you're having some trouble with the slides. I got your copy. Do you want me to do the screen share?
That would be perfect. Thank you so much.
Let me just get to the right spot. I saw a big box of Twinkies, and I knew that was.
we're in the big red SBOM surrounded by things where I'm sort of going to be illustrating so SBOMs won't solve all of our supply chain problems. It's not meant to. It's meant to be a key part that enables other work. So if you're in the business of thinking about secure development, SBOM can support that. It's very hard to claim. So if you go forward a few more slides. Next one. Perfect. Thank you so much, Tracy. So I really appreciate that. Great team you guys have over at CISQ. So secure development process, SBOM can support that. If you're focusing on your supply chain risk, SBOM is going to be a key component of that. If you're thinking about third-party risk management, very hard to do that in a holistic way without understanding what are the software dependencies. And finally, of course, vulnerability management, where just finding out what are the risks of what's running on my network. So let's go to the next two slides. So how are we going to be doing this? Next slide. So we've pulled together a great community so far. So over 100 people, probably close to 200 have been participating from around the world. The vision here is that several things. It must be cross-sector. right? We didn't want to have a DoD specific solution and a healthcare specific solution and an automotive specific solution, right? We're all using the same software, so the solutions have to be cross-sector. That means it has to be lightweight and flexible and portable. We wanted to capture the entire supply chain, right? This isn't just an open source problem. This isn't just a commercial problem. This isn't just an embedded problem. And of course, we needed to start with the customers. What do people want, whether they're government agencies or if it's you just trying to buy software? So we need to capture the entire supply chain. So because we have that very broad scope, again, trying to keep this tight and lightweight in a fashion that really brings together the entire community. And so NTIA has used this thing we call the multi-stakeholder process, or this vision that says, let's bring the community together, and as a group, as a collective, we can define what are our needs. So next slide, please. Just very carefully, what we're not trying to do, this is not about government regulation. NTIA doesn't have regulatory authority in this space. This is not about source code disclosure. This is not a formal standards development process. Bob's going to talk about some standards that he's developing. I'll just briefly touch on some standards that already exist. And of course, as I mentioned, we're not trying to solve all the supply chain issues out there. We're focusing just on saying, once we have that software dependency is really useful, once we have that, then we can build a lot of great other tools on top of that. Next slide, please, Tracy. So we've made a lot of progress. We've been at this for just a few years. We've made a lot of progress. And there's been some consensus around the baseline of what an SBOM is. Again, from a crawl, walk, run model, focusing on a machine-readable solution, and again, making sure it's scalable and that it's modular, so it can slot into some of the other solutions. There's some great resources that I'm flagged for you at ntia.gov/SBOM, including what is an SBOM, why we should do this, how we can do it. So we're just very going to quickly walk through. Here's a next slide is a toy example of what an SBOM is, and just as a very simple approach. Now, this Acme appliance could be a weapon system, could be a container-based cloud app, could be anything in between. In this case, we've got our Acme appliance. It has exactly 2 dependencies. And then Bob's browser, in turn, depends on Carol's compression engine. The other thing to note here, next slide, is that we're explicit about what are the known unknowns. So in this case, we have no idea what's in bingo buffer. We know that Carol's compression engine has no further dependencies. Both of those are okay because, again, the goal is to make this information available. Next slide, please. For each of these components, we may want a whole lot of information. Bob's going to touch on some of sort of the great list that we can have. The minimum viable approach is quite straightforward. Where did this come from? Who's the supplier? What's the component? What's the version? So that we both know we're talking about the same version, not a vulnerable one. And then what's the hash? So that I can feel confident that you didn't download something from a backward GitHub library. Next slide. How deep do we go is a question that a lot of folks have. We didn't want to be overly specific. There are going to be some customers that say, I want the entire supply chain. I want the entire dependency graph. Others are just going to say, you know what, give me the top dependencies, give me what you can. The vision here is that ideally, as you know more, you can ask for more. And if you really care, you can start to do the research yourself through the SCA industry and things like that. So we're going to hopefully recurse our way as this idea matures. Very briefly, next slide. So why should we do it? Next slide. Again, it depends on where you sit in the ecosystem. It's useful for folks who make software. It's useful for folks who are buying software and doing risk analysis. And of course, those of us who operate software. And I'll make these slides available. Next, please. So how should we do it? Very briefly, Bob's going to talk about a great new way. But the vision here is that the formats, there are existing formats out there. We've identified the common elements. And we've adopted a strategy of radical ecumenicism. The government shouldn't be involved in picking winners or losers. There are already 3 standards out there. We're going to have a great 4th one. And the vision is making sure that they can all talk to each other so that we're maximizing interoperability. If we go to the next slide, I'll just flag briefly that SPDX comes out of Linux Foundation. SWID is something that NIST has been looking at for many years. Cyclone DX is new, but is very popular in the OWASP and the web development community. So there's a lot of options here in addition to what Bob's about to talk about that I think has a lot of value to add. Next. And just very briefly before I turn things over to Bob, that we're focusing on making sure that we can already do this today. And in fact, the healthcare sector, which I don't very few of us look to as a leader in security, has been trying to do this for the last 2 years. And they've won, and they've been able to do it, where some of the largest medical device manufacturers on the planet, global based, including American companies as well as European based companies, have been generating SBOMs. They've been sharing them with their hospital customers, and those customers have been using them against predefined use cases: asset management, risk management, pre-purchase risk decision making. So this is something that we're working on today. You can jump in, and Bob's going to tell you about a great new set that he has been leading as well. So I think we can pass it over to Bob.
Thanks, Allan.
Thank you for stepping in and helping with this.
Oh, you're welcome. So Bob, I'm going to give you presenter control here.
Okay, and I'm showing the wrong screen. Change present. How do I change which screen I'm showing?
It's a good question, but again, I have your slides too, so.
No, I'll do it. Can do it here. Is that doing better?
Let's see. Don't see it yet.
Okay.
Yeah, all we're seeing is Allan
Oh my.
and Allan's library.
I'm kind of jealous of all
No,
the
it's
shells.
a good library to see.
There you
There
go.
we go.
All right.
Okay. And very good. So I'm going to have to make sure my caffeine I just took is metabolized so I can speak as fast as Allan. But basically, if you think about what Allan was talking about and you look at the community, I position it as this way: is Allan's been talking about end users and those who produce products that have software, getting them engaged, getting the use cases refined, and really work that through and get people into the idea of SBOMs and really think about how they can play a role in our enterprises. There's also the community that makes the tools that software builders use to build their software products. And that's where the tool-to-tool software bill of material exchange standard is focused. So hopefully that gives you a little positioning between the two aspects. And when we started working this, we said, okay, well, first we have to figure out who's doing this development and what are the other parts of that ecosystem. So code repositories, package repos, choreographic tools and capabilities, software composition analysis, Allan mentioned SCA, these kinds of capabilities, as well as the testing environments and tools and operations, licensing information and management, as well as the vulnerability information. So that's kind of the ecosystem that we set up to engage with this standards effort. And we went out and we identified both commercial and open source efforts that were in each of these areas. And this isn't a complete list, even though it's large. And when we put this list together, we also went and looked at who's actually been doing work in this area before. So the whole provenance and pedigree issue is one that's many people think they're very familiar with those concepts, but often they convolute them. Pedigree is how was the thing made? Provenance is a chain of custody, and that's at least how we're addressing it, and that's actually how OMG has been addressing it for a couple of years. There's also support from some of the commercial people out there. Uber, who has a very large dependence on their software, has really focused on provenance. Where is things coming? What's that change custody? We also coming out of and working with NTIA's effort, very aware of those standards, and really we wanted to see, since none of those were purpose built for this problem set, we wanted to engage with them and talk to them and get their ideas, as well as in toto, a security, supply chain security focused for software effort, and get all of them engaged. And the other part of this is, when you talk about an SBOM, you can talk about it's a supplier to their customer, and it's for different use cases. And we've talked about several of them, being able to just refer to something when you transfer it, purchase it, or just want to point to it, the pedigree, its history, its provenance, the chain of custody. You want to also be able to talk about integrity. You want to be talking about proper use and legal issues. You want to know about the vulnerabilities. You may want to give assurance information about something. You may want to think about when you invoke a service, what was the SBOM that actually invoked it? Because once you invoke it again, it may be a different SBOM. And so if that software as a service was vulnerable, you need to know the SBOM when you ran it versus what's running now. Then there's the whole supply chain integrity. Did all the right things that were supposed to go on as that software went through a supply chain actually happen? So those are the 9 use cases we have. And it's between tiers, so a supplier and their customer, or it could be amongst the supplier, their customer, and who they're a supplier to. So it could be multi-hop. And the other thing to put on the table here is many of these, when you talk about a supplier and the customer, there's going to be contracts and agreements that will focus and scope what is shared and what details. So not everything we talk about is going to be put out on some web page. It's going to be up to the agreements and the contracts that are governing that kind of thing. So we put together this little scenario where we have the different 9 use cases, some candidate elements, and then there's other information that may need to come to play. So what we've done is we've actually gone through these to try to explore what parts of a SBOM needed what kind of information and put all this together. So there's a white paper that's available that really captures that, but this effort is also publicly available on the CISQ website. If you look at active efforts, it's on a pull-down menu. You can see who's involved. It's a wide variety of different organizations. And you can see that we started with the NTIA's framing group's definition of the baseline. We now call that our core, but it's basically the things that are the meat of this SBOM, and then we're going to build on top of that. If you go to the CISQ page at the bottom of it, there's a link to a Google Drive and our GitHub repository and our email. If you get into this, you can see that we have the white paper that I was referring to that captures those scenarios I just walked you through real quickly. You can also see that we've got some drafts of the models, and we've got 4 different subgroups that are going on. The main group, and then we've got one that's on the core, one that's on our integrity efforts, and one on our defects. I just wanted to quickly show you the model. Not going to try to explain it. It's available up on in the core working group, sub working group area. But basically, we've got this main element which captures certain things. We've got a document identified. Then there's artifacts, the identity, which can be for a tool, an organization, or a person. We can refer to external items. There's ability to capture relationships, and we've got down below being able to point to packages, files, and snippets. And if you notice right above that red circle, there's a line. We've actually separated out the things that are specific to software, the things that are about bills and materials in a more general way. and that's going to let us do future things. So we also have the hash, but that's only one of the integrity methods. If you're talking about hardware, you may actually have, tamper resistant items. That is how you do that in the hardware world. So we've also leveraged different parts from Cyclone DX and SPDX and other parts of the community, and talking about algorithms and approaches and the different objects we want to refer to. And so when you look at this picture, I'll offer a slightly different area where maybe we want to also address hardware and things that aren't just in the software realm. So we basically have a core bill of materials in the standard. It has a software bill of material profile or compliance point, but there's going to be other compliance points, and this is where some of the more complex things that Allan mentioned, having a license, being able to know the pedigree, what was the compiler options used to build that, or the provenance, where did the software come from, and the different hops, and other things. So that's basically the details of it. We have a very aggressive timeline, and then we're going to hopefully get this through the RFC process at OMG, and then out into ISO once it's done. With that, here's the organizations that are involved in our meetings. We have a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, and a Thursday meeting. We try not to meet on Fridays because that's when the NTIA groups meet. So with that, this is my contact information. These slides are available. And back to Allan.
Thanks, Bob. I appreciate it, and the team's been doing some good work. So just very briefly, what's coming from the broader NTIA community, SBOM community. So first, as Bob talked about, we're sort of tackling some known hard problems that, as we sort of approach implementation, are becoming apparent, such as how do we share this stuff across the supply chain? How do we think about the fact that not all vulnerabilities actually put your organization at risk? How do we think about the sort of high assurance use cases? How do we think about this in the context of cloud or SaaS? We're focusing on tooling. So it turns out that there are a bunch of tools out there today that can already do a lot of what we need with the existing standards we have. So we're trying to document them. It's a great chance for organizations who provide these tools to join in and say, hey, if you use one of these existing formats or these soon to be formats, we'll put you on this list. And of course, getting this out there in the world. How do companies ask for SBOMs, put it in contract language or as part of a risk assessment, and further demonstrations in different sectors. We're working the financial sector, the energy sector, the automotive sector. I've talked to a lot of folks in DoD, a lot of folks in the IC to think about it. The final thing that we're tackling is playbooks and how-to guides. So on our next meeting on October 22nd, we're going to be introducing the first draft of the playbook of saying, here's how you can implement SBOM depending on what your personal situations are. So just very briefly, the last slide here, Bob, if I could ask you to jump through it. There's a lot of great stuff going on in this world. We think that SBOM is coming. Right now it's happening in a non-regulatory fashion where there are a lot of different ways to do it. We invite you to figure out what's going to work for you. And this is your chance to weigh in and make sure that what is coming reflects the needs of your organization. I think it's inevitable that government's going to government. We already have, different parts of the government starting to call for this. I personally work closely with a number of different supply chain efforts around the U.S. government. And what we're trying to do is make sure that we're finding solutions that meet the needs of the community. So get involved. Check out the resources that Bob talked about. Check out the resources at ntia.gov/SBOM and join the conversation with #SBOM. Thank you so much for your time.
Allan, thank you. Maybe we'll take one question before we break for lunch. There was a question from Mercia Arnold on, does the SBOM tie into the work of the CMMC levels of assessment and audits?
Great question. And you will have to, of course, ask the CMMC implementers. We have sat down and talked with DoD CIO and a number of other folks that are related to this. I think what we've tried to emphasize at NTIA is that SBOM itself is still an evolving issue. and we really want to make sure that it is implementable in a scalable fashion. But there are a number of different areas where we think it's very easy to read in the need for an SBOM as different things mature. So for example, in the energy sector, NERC CIP 13 calls for knowing what your supply chain risks are. And while it doesn't explicitly call it SBOM, it's hard to imagine that in a few years, that's not going to be part of it.
Great. Allan, thank you very much. And thank you, Bob, for a great session. We'll break for lunch now. We'll be back in 1 hour. So depending on your time zone, come back at 1 o'clock if you're in the east, or noon if you're in central, or if you're further out, just add an hour on per time zone. So good luck on getting a quick peanut butter and jelly sandwich down in your kitchen, or ordering in some pizza. And we will see you in 1 hour.